The cold waters of Lake Constance have kept their secrets buried for nearly 8 decades. Beneath the surface, where darkness swallows everything beyond 20 feet, something impossible has been waiting. In March 2024, a routine diving expedition would uncover what experts are calling the most significant World War II discovery in modern history. What they found wasn't just wreckage or artifacts. It was an entire hidden world that one German pilot had constructed in absolute secrecy, a world that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the final days of the war. March 15, 2024. The morning mist clung to Lake Constance like a burial shroud as the research vessel Poseidon cut through the glassy water. Dr. Klaus Weber adjusted his diving equipment one final time, unaware that he was about to stumble upon a mystery that would consume the next year of his life. Weber wasn't treasure hunting or searching for war relics. His team, from the Institute for Underwater Archaeology, was conducting a routine survey of the lake's deepest sections, documenting changes in the underwater ecosystem. At precisely 10:42 a.m., Weber's sonar equipment detected something anomalous. A geometric structure, perfectly rectangular, sitting on the lake floor at a depth of 180 feet. The readings made no sense. According to every historical record, every map, every survey conducted over the past 79 years, nothing should have existed at those coordinates. Weber checked his equipment twice, then a third time. The readings remained consistent. 2 hours later, Weber descended into the murky depths, his underwater lights cutting through the darkness like searchlights piercing fog. What he saw defied explanation. Nestled against the lake's sloping floor, camouflaged by decades of sediment and aquatic growth, stood a structure that shouldn't exist. A house. Not the ruins of a house, not the skeletal remains of some forgotten building, but an actual house, perfectly preserved beneath the water. The structure was unlike anything Weber had encountered in 20 years of underwater exploration. Built from reinforced concrete and steel, it measured roughly 40 feet long and 25 feet wide. Most impossibly, it appeared to be completely intact. No structural damage, no collapsed walls, no signs of the deterioration that should have claimed any underwater structure after 8 decades. Through the murky water, Weber could make out windows, still fitted with glass, and what appeared to be a front door, sealed with some kind of waterproof mechanism. Weber's heart pounded as he approached the structure. His diving computer showed he had limited time at this depth, but he couldn't resist investigating further. Swimming closer to the nearest window, he pressed his mask against the glass and peered inside. What he saw made him question his own sanity. The interior was dry, completely, impossibly dry. Furniture sat exactly where someone had placed it decades ago. Books lined shelves along the walls. A dining table was set for one, complete with plates and silverware. And hanging on the far wall, barely visible through the water-stained glass, was a German Luftwaffe uniform. When Weber surfaced and reported his discovery, the initial reaction was skepticism, then disbelief, then frantic excitement. Within hours, the site was swarming with officials from the German Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, marine archaeologists, and military historians. The lake was cordoned off. Media restrictions were immediately imposed. Whatever Weber had found, it was significant enough to mobilize resources that hadn't been deployed since the discovery of unexploded ordnance near Munich 5 years earlier. The investigation that followed would reveal a story so extraordinary that it challenged everything historians thought they knew about the final days of World War II. The house belonged to Hauptmann Friedrich von Zimmermann, a Luftwaffe pilot who had vanished without a trace on April 12, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender. Von Zimmermann's disappearance had been one of thousands that occurred during the war's chaotic final months. His case file, buried in military archives for decades, contained little more than basic service records and a single witness statement from his wingman, who reported seeing von Zimmermann's aircraft diving toward Lake Constance during their final mission. But von Zimmermann hadn't crashed. He had planned one of the most elaborate disappearances in military history. Using engineering knowledge gained from his pre-war career as a civil engineer, he had spent months secretly constructing an underwater refuge in the deepest section of Lake Constance. The house wasn't just a hiding place. It was a fully functional living space, complete with an air supply system, water purification equipment, and enough preserved food to sustain one person for years. The discovery raised immediate questions that sent shockwaves through academic and military circles. How had von Zimmermann constructed such a complex underwater structure without detection? How had it remained hidden for nearly 8 decades? Most troubling of all, what had driven a decorated German pilot to go to such extraordinary lengths to disappear? Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a military historian from Cambridge University who was brought in to consult on the case, described the find as unprecedented. In 30 years of studying World War II disappearances, she had never encountered anything comparable to von Zimmermann's underwater sanctuary. The level of planning, the engineering sophistication, the sheer audacity of the undertaking suggested this wasn't a desperate escape plan conceived in the war's final days. This was a long-term project, meticulously planned and executed over months, possibly years. The construction details alone were staggering. Von Zimmermann had somehow acquired massive quantities of specialized materials, including waterproof concrete, reinforced steel plating, and advanced breathing apparatus, all during wartime when such resources were strictly controlled by the military. He had transported these materials to one of the most remote sections of Lake Constance, assembled them underwater, and created a structure that could withstand the immense pressure of nearly 200 feet of water above it. Even more remarkable was the house's preservation system. Von Zimmermann had designed an ingenious air circulation mechanism that created positive pressure inside the structure, preventing water infiltration for decades. The system was powered by a hand-crank generator that could operate indefinitely with manual input. Every detail had been considered, from backup food storage to waste disposal systems that would leave no trace on the lake's surface. As investigators began cataloging the house's contents, they uncovered evidence that von Zimmermann hadn't simply vanished into his underwater refuge. He had lived there. Personal belongings, carefully preserved in waterproof containers, told the story of months spent in complete isolation beneath the lake. A journal, written in meticulous German script, documented his daily routine, his thoughts, his gradual descent into something that resembled madness. The journal entries painted a picture of a man haunted not just by the war's atrocities, but by something far more personal. Von Zimmermann wrote extensively about his guilt over bombing missions, about civilian casualties he had witnessed, about orders he had followed despite his growing moral reservations. But there were other entries, darker passages that hinted at knowledge he possessed, secrets he carried that made disappearance preferable to capture by advancing Allied forces. One entry, dated June 3, 1945, nearly 2 months after his supposed death, read, "The water above presses down like the weight of conscience itself. I have seen what men become when they believe their cause justifies any action. I have seen the files, the documents, the plans that were never meant to exist. Better that these secrets die with me in this place than poison another generation." What secrets had von Zimmermann discovered? What knowledge had driven him to construct an elaborate underwater tomb and disappear into it forever? The journal offered tantalizing hints but no clear answers. References to classified documents, to meetings with high-ranking officials, to projects that existed beyond the scope of normal military operations. Von Zimmermann had been more than just a pilot. He had been privy to information that terrified him enough to choose isolation over freedom. The investigation team faced a complex challenge. How do you explore a perfectly preserved underwater time capsule without destroying the very evidence you're trying to recover? Every item in the house was potentially significant, but removing anything required careful planning to prevent deterioration once exposed to air and light after 8 decades underwater. Dr. Weber's team developed specialized extraction protocols using pressurized containers to maintain the underwater environment for artifacts as they were brought to the surface. Each room was photographed and documented in minute detail before anything was disturbed. The process was painstakingly slow, but the results were extraordinary. In what appeared to be von Zimmermann's study, investigators found maps marked with locations throughout Europe, some circled in red ink, others crossed out entirely. Technical drawings showed aircraft modifications that didn't match any known Luftwaffe specifications. Most intriguingly, they discovered a sealed metal container holding documents written in a code that military cryptographers were still working to decipher months after the discovery. The bedroom revealed personal effects that humanized the mysterious pilot. Photographs of a woman and 2 young children, carefully preserved in waterproof frames. Letters from family members, postmarked from various German cities in early 1945, expressing worry about his safety and hope for his return. A wedding ring, placed carefully on a nightstand beside a brief note written in von Zimmermann's hand. Forgive me for choosing honor over homecoming, but it was the house's final room that would prove most significant to understanding von Zimmermann's disappearance. Hidden behind what appeared to be a false wall, investigators discovered a workshop containing equipment that definitely didn't belong in 1945. Machine tools that seemed decades ahead of their time. Electronic components that resembled nothing from the World War II era. Most puzzling of all, partially assembled devices whose purpose remained completely mysterious to modern engineers. The workshop's contents defied every assumption about 1940 seconds technology. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in wartime German engineering, spent 3 weeks examining the mysterious devices before admitting she had no framework for understanding what she was seeing. The components appeared to be decades ahead of anything produced during the war. Precision-machined parts that showed manufacturing techniques unknown until the 1970 seconds. Electronic circuits that resembled modern microprocessors more than vacuum tube technology. Von Zimmermann's journal entries from his final months provided disturbing context for the workshop's existence. He wrote extensively about being assigned to a classified project codenamed Operation Zeitgeist in late 1944. The entries described underground facilities hidden in the Bavarian Alps, where German scientists were working on technologies that seemed to come from another era entirely. Von Zimmermann had been selected to pilot test aircraft for this program, aircraft that incorporated propulsion systems unlike anything in the standard Luftwaffe arsenal. "Today I flew something that shouldn't exist," he wrote in December 1944. "The acceleration was beyond comprehension. No engine noise, no vibration, just silent speed that pressed me into my seat like the hand of God himself. The other pilots whisper about anti-gravity, about recovered technology from somewhere else entirely. I begin to understand why so many of us never return from these test flights. The implications were staggering. If von Zimmermann's accounts were accurate, Nazi Germany had been developing technology far beyond what historians believed possible. But where had this advanced knowledge originated? The journal entries hinted at something even more extraordinary. References to crash sites, to recovered materials, to reverse engineering projects that suggested the technology wasn't German in origin at all. Military intelligence agencies from 3 countries converged on the Lake House investigation. The discovery had moved beyond academic interest into the realm of national security. If advanced technology had been hidden beneath Lake Constance for 8 decades, governments wanted to know what else might be waiting to be discovered. The site was reclassified, access became strictly limited, and media coverage was heavily restricted. Dr. Mitchell found herself at the center of an international incident when she attempted to publish preliminary findings about the discovery. Government officials politely but firmly suggested that certain aspects of von Zimmermann's story should remain classified pending further investigation. The academic community erupted in protest, but the decision stood. Whatever secrets the underwater house contained, they were considered too sensitive for public consumption. The investigation took a disturbing turn when researchers discovered that von Zimmermann hadn't been alone in his knowledge of advanced technology. Cross-referencing his journal entries with newly declassified wartime documents revealed a network of German officers who had vanished during the war's final months. All had been associated with Operation Zeitgeist. All had disappeared without explanation. Von Zimmermann was simply the only one whose hiding place had finally been found. Captain Hans Müller vanished during a test flight over the North Sea in March 1945. Major Wilhelm Kruger disappeared while transporting classified materials from a research facility near Peenemünde. Lieutenant Colonel Anton Richter was last seen leaving a secret meeting in Berlin, carrying a briefcase that was never recovered. The pattern was unmistakable. These weren't random disappearances. They were orchestrated vanishing acts by men who possessed knowledge they believed was too dangerous to fall into enemy hands. Von Zimmermann's final journal entries revealed the psychological toll of his isolation. Months of solitude beneath the lake had gradually eroded his sanity. His handwriting became increasingly erratic. His thoughts grew paranoid and disjointed. He wrote obsessively about being watched, about shadows moving past his windows, about sounds from the lake floor that couldn't possibly exist at such depths. "They know where I am," he wrote in August 1945. "I see their lights moving through the water at night. They're searching, always searching. The technology must not be found. The knowledge must die with me." Humanity isn't ready for what we discovered in those underground chambers. Perhaps humanity will never be ready. The entries painted a picture of a man slowly losing his grip on reality, but they also contained technical details that proved remarkably accurate when compared to modern aerospace technology. Von Zimmermann described propulsion principles that wouldn't be publicly understood for decades. He sketched design concepts that resembled classified aircraft developed in the 1,980 seconds and 1,990 seconds. Either he was a remarkably prescient engineer, or he had access to knowledge that originated outside normal technological development. As investigators continued exploring the house, they discovered evidence that von Zimmermann had been conducting his own experiments during his underwater exile. The workshop contained notebooks filled with calculations and design modifications. He had been attempting to improve upon the technology he had witnessed during Operation Zeitgeist, working with limited materials to advance concepts that already exceeded the understanding of his era. Most troubling were the final modifications to his breathing system. Von Zimmermann had altered the air circulation equipment in ways that suggested he was preparing for something beyond normal operation. Oxygen concentrators had been modified to handle extreme atmospheric pressures. Filtration systems had been enhanced to process air contaminated with unknown substances. The changes implied he expected to encounter environmental conditions that didn't exist naturally on Earth. The house's location itself proved significant upon further analysis. Lake Constance sits at the intersection of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, making it an ideal location for someone seeking to avoid capture by any single nation's authorities. But geological surveys revealed something more intriguing. The lake sits directly above a complex network of underground caverns, some extending hundreds of feet below the lake floor. Von Zimmermann hadn't chosen this location randomly. He had selected it based on geological knowledge that wasn't publicly available in 1945. Sonar mapping of the lake's depths revealed additional anomalies. Geometric shapes on the lake floor that didn't match natural geological formations. Metallic signatures that suggested other artificial structures might be hidden beneath decades of sediment. Von Zimmermann's underwater house was beginning to look less like an isolated refuge and more like part of a larger network of hidden installations. The international implications grew more complex as governments realized they might be dealing with multiple underwater sites containing advanced technology. If von Zimmermann and his colleagues had successfully hidden their knowledge in various locations throughout Europe, the race to recover these sites became a matter of national security. Countries that had been allies in investigating the lake house discovery suddenly became competitors for access to potentially revolutionary technology. Dr. Weber found himself under constant surveillance as the investigation expanded. His discovery had triggered a chain reaction that extended far beyond academic research. Intelligence agencies wanted to know exactly what he had found, when he had found it, and who else might have access to the information. The simple underwater archaeology expedition had evolved into a classified military operation. The scientific community watched in frustration as access to von Zimmermann's house became increasingly restricted. Researchers who had initially been invited to participate in the investigation found themselves excluded from critical discoveries. Academic papers were censored or suppressed entirely. The pursuit of historical truth had collided with modern security concerns, and truth was losing. Meanwhile, the mystery of von Zimmermann's ultimate fate remained unsolved. His journal entries ended abruptly in September 1945, with no explanation for his disappearance from the underwater refuge he had spent months constructing. The house showed no signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, no indication that he had been discovered by enemy forces. He had simply vanished from his own carefully constructed sanctuary, leaving behind only questions that grew more troubling with each new discovery. The search for answers led investigators to examine von Zimmermann's pre-war activities with unprecedented scrutiny. What they discovered painted a picture of a man who had been preparing for his disappearance years before the war even began. Property records showed he had purchased land around Lake Constance through a series of shell companies as early as 1938. Bank statements revealed systematic transfers of funds to Swiss accounts, suggesting he had been planning his eventual escape route long before Germany's military situation became desperate. More disturbing were the connections investigators uncovered between von Zimmermann and other high-ranking German officials who had also vanished during the war's final months. Phone records from 1944 showed frequent communications between von Zimmermann and Dr. Heinrich Kessler, a physicist who had worked on classified projects before disappearing in April 1945. Hotel registries placed both men at the same remote alpine lodge multiple times throughout 1944, along with other officers whose fates remained unknown. The pattern suggested something far more organized than individual escape plans. These men hadn't simply fled to avoid capture. They had coordinated their disappearances, possibly taking critical knowledge and technology with them to locations that remained undiscovered. Von Zimmermann's underwater sanctuary might have been just one node in a network of hidden installations scattered across Europe. Dr. Vasquez's analysis of the workshop equipment yielded increasingly unsettling results. Metallurgical testing revealed alloys that contained trace elements not found naturally on Earth. The precision of the machining exceeded what should have been possible with 1940 seconds technology by several orders of magnitude. Most puzzling were the electronic components, which showed design principles that wouldn't be understood by mainstream science for decades. The components appeared to be reverse-engineered versions of something even more advanced. Scratch marks on metal surfaces suggested someone had disassembled existing devices and attempted to replicate their function using available materials. Von Zimmermann hadn't invented this technology. He had been trying to recreate it from examples he had seen elsewhere. His journal entries from late 1944 provided disturbing context for this reverse engineering effort. He wrote extensively about visiting underground facilities where German scientists were studying recovered materials from crash sites throughout Europe. The descriptions defied conventional understanding of wartime technology development. Laboratories hidden hundreds of feet underground, staffed by scientists sworn to absolute secrecy, working on projects that seemed to originate from sources outside normal human knowledge. The materials we examined show manufacturing techniques that shouldn't exist, von Zimmermann wrote in November 1944. Molecular structures that defy explanation. Propulsion systems that operate on principles our physics cannot explain. The Americans and Russians are searching for our rocket scientists, but they have no idea what we've really discovered. They're looking for conventional weapons while we study artifacts that suggest we are not alone in this universe. The implications sent shockwaves through the international intelligence community. If von Zimmermann's accounts were accurate, Nazi Germany had been in possession of technology that originated from non-human sources. The race to recover hidden installations took on new urgency as governments realized they might be competing for access to knowledge that could revolutionize human civilization or destroy it entirely. Cryptographers working to decode von Zimmermann's encrypted documents made a breakthrough in August 2024, 5 months after the Lake House discovery. The decoded files contained coordinates for 12 additional sites throughout Europe where advanced technology had allegedly been hidden. Each location corresponded to a geological feature that could conceal underground installations. Deep caves in the Austrian Alps, abandoned mine shafts in the Czech Republic, natural sinkholes in remote sections of the Black Forest. The decoded documents also revealed the true purpose of Operation Zeitgeist. It hadn't been a conventional weapons development program. It was a recovery and reverse engineering operation designed to study non-human technology that had been acquired through unknown means. The operation's name itself was telling. Zeitgeist, meaning the spirit of the times, suggested the German leadership believed they were preparing for a new era in human development. Von Zimmermann's role in the operation had been more significant than initially understood. As a test pilot, he had been one of only a handful of men authorized to fly aircraft incorporating the recovered technology. His engineering background made him invaluable for understanding how the advanced propulsion systems functioned. But his access to classified information had also made him a liability when Germany's defeat became inevitable. The journal entries from his final months revealed growing paranoia within the Operation Zeitgeist leadership. Scientists and military personnel with knowledge of the program were being systematically eliminated or relocated to prevent their capture by Allied forces. Von Zimmermann had realized his own life was in danger when several colleagues disappeared under mysterious circumstances in early 1945. "They came for Kessler last night," he wrote in March 1945. "Official reports say he was killed in an air raid, but I saw him being escorted from his laboratory by SS officers. They're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who knows too much. I must implement my escape plan before they come for me." The escape plan had been years in development. Using his engineering expertise, von Zimmermann had designed and constructed his underwater refuge during weekend trips to Lake Constance, working under cover of recreational diving expeditions. The house's components had been fabricated in small sections at different locations to avoid detection, then assembled underwater using specialized diving equipment he had acquired through military channels. The sophistication of his plan extended beyond the physical construction. Von Zimmermann had created false documentation suggesting his aircraft had crashed during a routine patrol, complete with fabricated debris scattered across a remote section of countryside. His wingman had been paid to provide false testimony about witnessing the crash. Even his personal effects had been planted at the supposed crash site to convince investigators of his death. But the most chilling aspect of von Zimmermann's escape wasn't the elaborate planning or engineering expertise. It was what he had taken with him into his underwater sanctuary. According to the decoded documents, he had stolen critical components from the Operation Zeitgeist laboratories, technology that the German leadership considered essential to their post-war survival plans. His theft had crippled ongoing research projects and eliminated Germany's ability to continue developing the advanced propulsion systems. The stolen technology remained hidden somewhere in the lake house or its surrounding area. Despite months of intensive searching, investigators had been unable to locate the missing components. Von Zimmermann had hidden them so effectively that even his detailed journal entries provided no clear indication of their location. The technology that could revolutionize human understanding of physics and propulsion remained tantalizingly out of reach. Dr. Mitchell's research into the other missing Operation Zeitgeist personnel revealed a disturbing pattern. Each of the vanished officers had possessed specific technical knowledge essential to understanding different aspects of the recovered technology. Mueller had been an expert in metallurgy. Kruger had specialized in electronic systems. Richter had been a propulsion engineer. Together, they had represented the complete knowledge base necessary to reproduce the advanced technology. Their coordinated disappearance suggested they had planned to continue their work in hiding, possibly with the intention of eventually revealing their discoveries when the political situation stabilized. But decades had passed without any sign of the missing officers or their knowledge. Either they had died in their hiding places, or they had successfully vanished so completely that no trace of their activities had ever surfaced. The search for additional hidden sites intensified as governments realized the potential implications of recovering intact, advanced technology. Satellite imagery was employed to identify geological features that matched the coordinates from von Zimmermann's documents. Ground-penetrating radar teams were dispatched to investigate suspicious formations in remote areas. The race to uncover Operation Zeitgeist's secrets had become a multinational competition with stakes that extended far beyond historical curiosity. Meanwhile, analysis of the lake house's construction revealed details that raised new questions about von Zimmermann's technical capabilities. The underwater structure incorporated design principles that wouldn't be fully understood until decades later. Pressure distribution systems that resembled modern submarine technology, air circulation mechanisms that anticipated developments in life support systems for space exploration. Either von Zimmermann had been a remarkably prescient engineer, or he had access to knowledge that originated from sources beyond 1,940 seconds human understanding. The mystery deepened when investigators discovered that several components of the house's life support systems contained materials that didn't exist in 1945. Polymer compounds that weren't developed until the 1,960 seconds. Rare earth elements that weren't available commercially until decades after the war. Von Zimmermann had somehow acquired materials that shouldn't have existed during his lifetime, then incorporated them into a structure that had functioned flawlessly for nearly 8 decades. The implications were staggering and terrifying in equal measure. If von Zimmermann had access to technology and materials from the future, it suggested the recovered artifacts studied by Operation Zeitgeist might have originated from time travelers rather than extraterrestrial sources. The possibility opened up scenarios that challenged every assumption about causality and the nature of time itself. As winter approached Lake Constance in 2024, the investigation had expanded into one of the largest multinational research efforts since the Manhattan Project. Teams of scientists, engineers, historians, and intelligence operatives worked around the clock to unlock the secrets hidden beneath the lake's surface. But with each new discovery, the mystery seemed to deepen rather than resolve. Von Zimmermann's underwater sanctuary had become a window into a hidden history that no one was prepared to fully comprehend. And the international team's discoveries beneath Lake Constance continued to unravel conventional understanding of World War II technology. Dr. Weber's diving logs from October 2024 documented anomalies that defied explanation. Magnetic readings near the house showed fluctuations that suggested the presence of active electromagnetic fields, impossible after 8 decades underwater without power sources. Temperature variations around the structure created microclimates that shouldn't exist at such depths. The lake itself seemed to be responding to the house's presence in ways that violated basic principles of physics. Von Zimmermann's engineering notebooks, finally decoded after months of cryptographic work, revealed technical specifications that made seasoned aerospace engineers question their fundamental understanding of propulsion mechanics. Diagrams showed thrust-to-weight ratios that exceeded theoretical maximums by factors of 10, energy conversion systems that appeared to violate conservation laws. Most disturbing were calculations that accurately predicted technological developments that wouldn't occur for decades after his supposed death. The notebooks contained detailed observations about test flights he had conducted in aircraft that bore no resemblance to any known Luftwaffe designs. Descriptions of silent propulsion systems that generated no exhaust signatures. Maneuverability characteristics that ignored aerodynamic limitations. Flight ceilings that extended far beyond the atmosphere itself. Von Zimmermann hadn't just been testing advanced aircraft, he had been piloting vehicles that operated according to physical principles unknown to conventional science. Dr. Elena Vasquez's materials analysis yielded results that challenged everything researchers thought they knew about wartime manufacturing capabilities. Spectroscopic examination of metal components revealed isotopic ratios that didn't match terrestrial sources. The materials contained elements with atomic structures that shouldn't exist naturally anywhere in the solar system. Either von Zimmermann had access to artificial transmutation technology decades before it was theoretically possible, or the materials originated from sources beyond Earth entirely. The international intelligence community's response to these discoveries became increasingly aggressive as the strategic implications became clear. Countries that had initially cooperated in the investigation began withholding information from their allies. Access to the site became restricted to personnel with the highest security clearances. Academic researchers found themselves excluded from their own discoveries as military priorities superseded scientific inquiry. Government agencies launched covert operations to locate the remaining coordinates listed in von Zimmermann's decoded documents. Teams disguised as geological survey units began investigating suspicious formations throughout Europe. Mining operations were established as covers for excavating sites that might contain hidden installations. The search for Operation Zeitgeist's legacy had evolved into a shadow war, fought with archaeological tools and classified budgets. The breakthrough that changed everything came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's historical research had uncovered banking records showing financial transfers between von Zimmermann and a Swiss metallurgist named Hans Frolicker. The transactions dated back to 1939, years before Operation Zeitgeist officially began. Frolicker's company had specialized in exotic alloy production, but his client list included organizations that didn't appear in any official wartime records. Following the financial trail led investigators to a private vault in a Zurich bank that had remained unopened since 1945. The vault's contents provided the missing context for understanding von Zimmermann's true role in the advanced technology program. Documents revealed he hadn't been merely a test pilot recruited for an existing operation. He had been one of the founding architects of a conspiracy that extended far beyond Nazi Germany's military ambitions. The conspiracy involved industrialists, scientists, and military leaders from multiple countries who had secretly collaborated on studying and reverse engineering technology recovered from crash sites throughout the 1,930 seconds and early 1,940 seconds. The group called themselves the Ahnenerbe-Forschung, the Ancestral Heritage Research Society, and their membership included prominent figures from Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union, alongside their German counterparts. Von Zimmermann's personal correspondence, found in the vault, revealed the true scope of their activities. The group had been recovering and studying advanced technology for nearly a decade before World War II began. The war itself had provided cover for accelerating their research programs while diverting attention from their ultimate objectives, Operation Zeitgeist had been just the German branch of a multinational effort to weaponize technology that originated from unknown sources. The correspondence included letters from British physicist Dr. Margaret Thornfield, who had been conducting parallel research in underground laboratories beneath the English countryside. American industrialist Robert Blackwood had funded similar operations in remote facilities throughout the western United States. Soviet scientist Dr. Dmitry Volkov had established research stations in Siberian locations so remote they didn't appear on any maps. The Technology Recovery Program had been a truly international effort disguised as competing national interests. Von Zimmermann's role as a courier between these various research groups explained how he had acquired materials and knowledge that shouldn't have existed in 1945. He had been transporting technology samples and research data between facilities throughout Europe and beyond. His engineering expertise had made him invaluable for understanding how different components could be integrated into functional systems. But his growing moral objections to the group's activities had ultimately led to his decision to disappear with critical technology. The vault contained samples of the mysterious materials that had been studied by the Ahnenerbe-Forschung. Metallurgical analysis confirmed they matched the isotopic signatures found in von Zimmermann's workshop, but the samples also contained something that sent shockwaves through the international scientific community. Microscopic engravings etched into the metal surfaces at the molecular level. Symbols and mathematical equations that represented knowledge far beyond human understanding in the 1,940 seconds, or even today. Dr. Vasquez's team spent months attempting to decode the microscopic engravings. The symbols bore no resemblance to any known written language, human or otherwise. The mathematical concepts represented dimensional relationships that challenged basic assumptions about the nature of space and time. Most disturbing were equations that appeared to describe methods for manipulating gravitational fields and bending space-time itself. The implications forced governments to confront possibilities they weren't prepared to acknowledge publicly. If the engravings were authentic, they represented evidence of intelligence far superior to human capabilities. The technology hadn't been recovered from crash sites involving human aircraft. It had been acquired from sources that possessed knowledge of physics, principles that human science was still struggling to understand decades later. Von Zimmermann's final journal entries, discovered hidden in a waterproof container welded to the lake house's foundation, provided terrifying context for his ultimate decision to vanish. He had learned the true origin of the technology being studied by the Ahnenerbe-Forschung. The crash sites hadn't involved vehicles from the future or from other planets. They had been deliberately placed by intelligences that were studying human technological development and occasionally providing samples of advanced knowledge to accelerate human progress towards specific objectives. The entities behind the technology placement had been monitoring human civilization for centuries, gradually introducing concepts that would guide technological evolution along predetermined pathways. The Ahnenerbe-Forschung had unknowingly become part of a vast experiment in directed technological development. Their research wasn't advancing human knowledge. It was fulfilling an agenda established by intelligences whose motivations remained completely unknown. Von Zimmermann's growing awareness of humanity's role as unwitting test subjects had driven his decision to sabotage the research programs. He had stolen critical components not to continue the work in secret, but to prevent it from reaching completion. His underwater refuge hadn't been designed as a hiding place for continuing research. It had been constructed as a prison where he could ensure the stolen technology would never be recovered or misused. The journal's final entries described his gradual descent into paranoid isolation as he realized the entities behind the technology placement were aware of his sabotage. He wrote about strange phenomena around the lake house, unexplained lights moving through the water at depths where no human technology could operate, sounds that seemed to emanate from the lake floor itself. electromagnetic disturbances that interfered with his equipment in ways that suggested intelligent manipulation. "They know what I've done," he wrote in his final legible entry, dated December 1945. "The lights grow brighter each night. The sounds are forming patterns that almost resemble communication attempts. I understand now why the others chose to disappear completely rather than attempt to hide. One cannot hide from intelligences that can manipulate matter and energy at will. I have served my purpose by preventing the completion of their experiment. Now I must ensure the stolen components are never found." The entry ended with coordinates that led investigators to a sealed chamber hidden beneath the lake house's foundation. Inside, they discovered the missing technology components that von Zimmermann had stolen from the Operation Zeitgeist laboratories. But the components had been deliberately destroyed using methods that left no recoverable information about their original function. Von Zimmermann had spent his final months systematically eliminating every trace of the advanced technology to prevent its recovery and misuse. The destroyed components represented the culmination of decades of research by the world's most brilliant scientists and engineers. Their loss meant that humanity's understanding of the advanced propulsion and energy systems would have to develop naturally rather than through reverse engineering. Von Zimmermann had single-handedly prevented what he believed would have been a premature and potentially catastrophic acceleration of human technological capabilities. But his sacrifice hadn't eliminated the threat entirely. The entities that had been guiding human technological development for centuries were still present, still monitoring, still occasionally providing samples of advanced knowledge to selected researchers. The Forschung had been just one of many groups that had unknowingly participated in the directed evolution experiment. Other organizations, operating under different names and in different countries, continued the work without understanding their true role in a vast manipulation of human civilization. The investigation team's final report, classified at the highest levels of international security, concluded that von Zimmermann's discoveries represented both humanity's greatest opportunity and its most serious threat. The advanced technology offered solutions to energy, transportation, and environmental challenges that could revolutionize human civilization. But accepting that technology meant acknowledging that humanity was being manipulated by intelligences whose ultimate objectives remained unknown and potentially hostile. Dr. Weber's team was disbanded in early 2025. Their research scattered among various classified programs that operated without coordination or oversight. The lake house was sealed and declared a restricted zone, its secrets buried beneath layers of bureaucratic classification that ensured they would remain hidden for decades to come. Von Zimmermann's underwater sanctuary returned to the darkness of Lake Constance's depths, guarding mysteries that challenged humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The scientific community was left to grapple with questions that had no comfortable answers. How long had human technological development been guided by external intelligences? What other breakthrough discoveries throughout history had been the result of deliberate manipulation rather than human ingenuity? Most troubling of all, what would happen when humanity inevitably developed the capabilities to detect and potentially resist the ongoing manipulation of its technological evolution? Evolution? The questions raised by von Zimmermann's discovery forced intelligence agencies to confront an uncomfortable reality that extended far beyond the confines of Lake Constance. If the Forschung had been operating as unwitting participants in a centuries-long manipulation of human technological development, then virtually every major scientific breakthrough in modern history required re-examination. The Manhattan Project, the space race, the development of computer technology, even the Internet itself might have been guided by influences that humanity had never recognized or acknowledged. Dr. Mitchell's expanded research into historical records revealed disturbing patterns that supported this possibility. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks contained technical drawings that anticipated developments centuries before the necessary supporting technologies existed. Nikola Tesla's revolutionary insights into electromagnetic fields had come to him through what he described as visions and dreams rather than systematic research. The Wright brothers' sudden breakthrough in powered flight had occurred after a period of secretive experimentation that they never fully documented or explained. Each case involved brilliant individuals who had made seemingly impossible leaps in understanding that couldn't be explained through conventional scientific methodology. The pattern suggested a consistent process of selective revelation where advanced concepts were introduced to specific individuals who possessed the intellectual capacity to develop them into practical applications. The process appeared designed to accelerate human technological development along predetermined pathways while maintaining the illusion of natural scientific progress. Government think tanks began modeling the implications of directed technological evolution on a global scale. If humanity's scientific advancement had been artificially accelerated for centuries, then the natural pace of human intellectual development might be far slower than generally believed. The technologies that defined modern civilization, from electricity to nuclear power to digital communication, might represent knowledge that humanity wasn't intellectually prepared to handle responsibly. The modeling exercises produced scenarios that kept intelligence analysts awake at night. If the entities responsible for directed technological evolution decided to withdraw their guidance, human scientific progress might stagnate or even regress as researchers found themselves unable to advance beyond their natural intellectual limitations. Conversely, if the entities decided to accelerate the process dramatically, humanity might find itself overwhelmed by technologies it couldn't control or understand, leading to civilizational collapse or extinction. Von Zimmermann's stolen technology components, despite being destroyed, had left trace evidence that allowed researchers to make educated guesses about their original capabilities. Residual electromagnetic signatures suggested propulsion systems that could manipulate gravitational fields directly rather than relying on conventional thrust mechanisms. Chemical analysis of destroyed materials indicated energy storage systems that operated on principles beyond current understanding of physics. The implications were staggering and terrifying in equal measure. The international intelligence community faced a dilemma that had no precedent in human history. Should they continue searching for additional Ahnenerbe-Forschung sites, knowing that recovering advanced technology might accelerate humanity toward a future it wasn't prepared to handle? Or should they follow von Zimmermann's example and actively work to prevent the recovery of knowledge that could fundamentally alter the course of human civilization? Different countries reached different conclusions, creating fractures in international cooperation that threatened global stability. Some nations established covert programs designed to locate and recover every trace of advanced technology they could find, viewing it as essential to maintaining competitive advantages in an increasingly complex world. Others implemented policies aimed at suppressing the technology entirely, believing that humanity needed time to develop the wisdom necessary to handle such powerful capabilities responsibly. The competition for technological advantage led to a new kind of arms race, one fought in archaeological sites and underwater excavations rather than missile silos and nuclear facilities. Teams of researchers, operating under cover of legitimate scientific expeditions, raced to locate and secure sites that might contain samples of advanced technology. The stakes were potentially higher than any previous conflict in human history, involving not just national security, but the fundamental direction of human evolution itself. Dr. Weber found himself at the center of this shadow conflict, his expertise in underwater archaeology making him invaluable to multiple competing interests. Government agencies from 6 different countries approached him with offers of unlimited funding and resources in exchange for exclusive access to his knowledge about von Zimmermann's construction techniques and site selection criteria. The pressure became so intense that he eventually disappeared entirely, leaving behind only a brief note stating that some knowledge was too dangerous to share. The search for Weber led investigators to a disturbing discovery about the original Ahnenerbe Forschung membership. Many of the group's founding members had also vanished without explanation during the years following World War II. Dr. Margaret Thornfield had disappeared from her London laboratory in 1947, leaving behind research notes that were immediately classified by the British government. Robert Blackwood had died in a suspicious accident at one of his remote facilities in 1949, with all his research materials subsequently confiscated by American intelligence agencies. The pattern suggested that the entities responsible for providing advanced technology had systematically eliminated human researchers who became too knowledgeable about the manipulation process. Von Zimmermann's fate might have been sealed not by his theft of technology components, but by his growing awareness of humanity's role as unwitting test subjects in a vast experiment. His underwater sanctuary hadn't been a hiding place from human authorities. It had been a desperate attempt to escape the attention of intelligences that viewed human researchers as disposable tools. This realization transformed the investigation from a historical research project into an active survival situation. Current researchers working on von Zimmermann's discoveries found themselves experiencing the same phenomena he had described in his final journal entries. Unexplained equipment malfunctions that seemed intelligently directed, electronic communications that were intercepted and altered in ways that suggested monitoring by unknown parties, physical surveillance by entities that appeared to possess capabilities far beyond human technology. Dr. Vasquez's team reported increasingly disturbing incidents at their materials analysis laboratory. Samples would disappear overnight from secure storage facilities with no signs of forced entry. Computer systems would malfunction in ways that erased specific data while leaving other information intact. Most unsettling were the electromagnetic disturbances that seemed to respond to their research activities, intensifying whenever they made progress in understanding the advanced materials and subsiding when their work stagnated. The psychological pressure on researchers became unbearable as they realized they were being monitored and evaluated by intelligences whose intentions remained completely unknown. Several team members suffered nervous breakdowns and had to be hospitalized. Others simply abandoned their research and refused to discuss their experiences. The pursuit of knowledge about von Zimmermann's discoveries was extracting a human cost that raised serious questions about whether the investigation should continue. Government oversight of the research programs became increasingly heavy-handed as intelligence agencies recognized the potential threats involved. Researchers were placed under constant surveillance, their communications monitored, their movements restricted. The scientific community protested these measures as violations of academic freedom, but the protests were ignored as national security concerns took precedence over scholarly inquiry. The irony wasn't lost on historians familiar with von Zimmermann's story. The same pattern of secrecy, surveillance, and suppression that had driven him to steal technology and disappear into Lake Constance was being repeated by modern governments desperate to control knowledge they didn't understand. Humanity seemed trapped in a cycle of pursuing dangerous knowledge while simultaneously trying to prevent others from acquiring it, a pattern that might have been orchestrated by the same entities that had been manipulating technological development for centuries. Underground resistance movements began forming among researchers who believed that humanity deserved access to the advanced technology regardless of the potential risks involved. These groups operated in secret, sharing information through encrypted channels and conducting unauthorized research in hidden facilities. Their activities created additional security concerns as governments found themselves fighting a multi-front battle against foreign intelligence services, unknown monitoring entities, and their own citizens. The situation reached a crisis point when satellite imagery detected unusual activity at several of the coordinates listed in von Zimmermann's decoded documents. Excavation equipment had appeared at remote sites throughout Europe, but no government claimed responsibility for the operations. The excavations were being conducted by unknown parties using technology that appeared more advanced than anything in current military arsenals. The entities that had been manipulating human technological development were apparently taking direct action to recover or destroy the hidden installations before human researchers could access them. Intelligence agencies launched covert operations to investigate the unauthorized excavations, but the teams sent to monitor these sites reported phenomena that defied explanation: equipment that disappeared and reappeared in different locations overnight, personnel who experienced missing time and memory gaps, electronic surveillance devices that captured images of entities that didn't match any known life forms. The investigation teams were encountering the same intelligences that von Zimmermann had described in his final journal entries, but now the entities were operating openly rather than maintaining their previous secrecy. The direct encounters forced government leaders to confront the reality that humanity was dealing with intelligences possessing capabilities that made conventional military responses irrelevant. Nuclear weapons were useless against entities that could manipulate matter and energy at the molecular level. Conventional forces couldn't engage targets that could become invisible to detection systems at will. Humanity found itself completely defenseless against beings whose technological capabilities exceeded human understanding by orders of magnitude. Diplomatic attempts to establish communication with the unknown entities produced no results. Messages broadcast on every frequency and transmitted through every available medium received no responses. The entities appeared to view human attempts at contact as irrelevant or beneath their notice. Their activities continued according to their own agenda, with no apparent concern for human opinions or desires regarding the fate of the advanced technology hidden throughout Europe. The psychological impact on human civilization was profound as people began to grasp the implications of the Lake Constance discovery. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile their theological frameworks with evidence of non-human intelligences that had been manipulating human development for centuries. Scientists questioned fundamental assumptions about human achievement and progress. Politicians faced the impossible task of maintaining social stability while acknowledging that humanity's future was being determined by forces beyond human control. Von Zimmermann's legacy had evolved far beyond his original intentions. His attempt to prevent the misuse of advanced technology by hiding it beneath Lake Constance had instead triggered a global crisis that threatened the foundations of human civilization. The knowledge he had tried to protect was being recovered by the same entities he had tried to thwart, while humanity found itself caught in the middle of a conflict it couldn't understand or influence. The investigation that had begun with Dr. Weber's routine diving expedition had transformed into a confrontation between human civilization and intelligences whose capabilities and motivations remained completely alien. Von Zimmermann's underwater sanctuary had become a symbol of humanity's desperate attempts to control knowledge that was beyond human comprehension, while the entities that had originally provided that knowledge demonstrated their ability to reclaim it whenever they chose. As winter deepened around Lake Constance, the site where it all began remained under heavy guard, its secrets partially revealed but never fully understood. The waters that had hidden von Zimmermann's refuge for nearly 8 decades continued to flow silently above the ruins of his underwater sanctuary, carrying with them the weight of discoveries that had changed humanity's understanding of its place in the universe forever. Place in the universe forever. Today, the cold waters of Lake Constance flow as they always have, but they carry with them the weight of revelations that have forever changed our understanding of human history. What began as Dr. Tooze and Deplast, Klaus Weber's routine archaeological survey became a discovery that shattered every assumption about our technological evolution and our place in the cosmos. Von Zimmermann's underwater sanctuary wasn't just the hiding place of a desperate German pilot. It was the key that unlocked evidence of a manipulation spanning centuries, orchestrated by intelligences whose capabilities and intentions remain beyond our comprehension. The most chilling aspect of this entire story isn't the advanced technology hidden beneath the lake, or even the evidence of non-human intelligence guiding our development. It's the realization that von Zimmermann's sacrifice might have been completely in vain. Despite his desperate attempts to prevent dangerous knowledge from falling into the wrong hands, the same entities he tried to thwart have simply reclaimed what they consider theirs, leaving humanity more vulnerable and confused than ever before. As governments continue their shadow war over scraps of advanced technology, and researchers disappear one by one into the same paranoid isolation that consumed von Zimmermann, we're left with questions that have no comfortable answers. How many other underwater sanctuaries remain hidden in lakes and oceans around the world? What other brilliant minds throughout history have discovered the truth about our manipulated evolution only to vanish without a trace? And perhaps most terrifying of all, what happens to humanity when these watching intelligences decide our usefulness as test subjects has finally come to an end? The mystery of the German pilot who vanished in 1945 has been solved, but the answers have only revealed the beginning of a far more disturbing truth about the nature of human progress and the forces that shape our destiny from the shadows. This story was intense, but this story, on the right-hand side, is even more insane.